30 days had passed since the first battle. 30 days of constant warfare. 30 days that changed everything the Velith Dominion believed about themselves and their place in the galaxy. Admiral Korath stood on the bridge of the Eternal Flame, watching his empire burn. The flagship was damaged now, its once beautiful hull scarred by human weapons. Half its systems were failing. Most of its crew was dead. The ship that had led 100 conquests was barely able to fly. The reinforcements had come. 10,000 additional Velith warships had arrived from the core worlds, the largest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled. Korath had been confident that such overwhelming force would finally crush the human resistance. He had been wrong. The humans had used those 30 days well. While the Velith waited for reinforcements, humanity had been building. New ships launched from hidden shipyards every day. New weapons were developed and deployed. New soldiers were trained and sent to the front lines. By the time the Velith reinforcements arrived, the human fleet had grown to over 30,000 vessels. But it was not just the numbers that made the difference. It was how the humans fought. They learned. Every battle taught them something new about Velith tactics, and they adapted instantly. Weaknesses in Velith shields were exploited within hours of being discovered. Patterns in Velith formations were identified and countered before they could be used twice. The humans fought like a single organism, millions of individuals thinking and acting as one, and they never stopped. The Velith were used to enemies who grew tired, who made mistakes from exhaustion, who eventually gave up. The humans did not give up. They rotated their crews, they repaired their ships, and they kept attacking. Day after day, battle after battle. They never slowed down. Now, the final battle was here. The two fleets faced each other near a planet the humans called Nova, the last major obstacle between the Velith and Earth. If the Dominion won here, the path to humanity's homeworld would be open. If they lost, their invasion would be over. Korath knew they would lose. He could see it in the numbers, in the positioning of the human fleet, in the confidence of their movements. The Velith had started this war with over 13,000 ships. They now had less than 4,000. The humans had lost ships too, but they had replaced them faster. Their fleet was larger now than when the war began. "Admiral," Dreth said, his voice quiet, "the humans are hailing us." Korath almost laughed. "Let me guess. They want us to surrender." "Yes, sir. Play it." The main screen flickered to life, showing a human face. It was the same Captain June who had sent the original warning, the warning Korath had dismissed as the words of a primitive. June looked tired but determined. Behind him, Korath could see the bridge of a human warship, its crew working efficiently at their stations. "Admiral Korath," June said, "your fleet is surrounded. Your reinforcement lines have been cut. Your empire has sent word that no more ships will be coming. This war is over. Surrender now, and we will treat your survivors fairly. Continue fighting, and we will destroy every ship you have left." The bridge of the Eternal Flame was silent. Every officer watched their admiral, waiting for his response. Korath looked at them, these soldiers who had served him faithfully for decades. They deserved the truth. How did this happen? He asked, speaking not to June, but to himself. How did we fail so completely? June heard the question. "You underestimated us, Admiral. You saw a species that evolved on a hostile world and assumed that made us weak. You were wrong. Our world made us strong. It made us survivors. It made us the one thing your Dominion never learned to fight. And what is that? A species that does not know how to quit." Korath closed his 4 eyes. In 60 years of military command, he had never considered surrender. The Velith did not surrender. It was against everything they believed. But looking at the tactical display, at the overwhelming human fleet surrounding his remaining ships, He understood that pride was not worth the lives of his soldiers. "What are your terms?" he asked. "Complete withdrawal from human space. Release of all captured human personnel. A formal peace treaty recognizing human territory as sovereign and independent. Accept these terms, and your surviving ships will be allowed to leave." The terms were harsh but fair. Korath had expected worse. He had expected the humans to demand vengeance, to want to destroy the Veloth completely. Instead, they were offering peace. "Why?" he asked. "You have the power to destroy us all. Why show mercy?" June was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer. "Because we are not like you, Admiral. We do not conquer for the sake of conquering. We do not kill when we do not have to. We wanted only to be left alone. You refused to give us that. Now we are giving you a choice that you never gave us. Take it. End this war. Go home." Korath made his decision. "I accept your terms." The bridge erupted in whispers. Dreth looked at his admiral with shock. But Korath raised his hand, silencing them all. "Signal the fleet. All ships are to stand down. We are done here." The order went out. The Veloth fleet, once the terror of 1,000 worlds, lowered its weapons. On the human side, cheering began. Ships flashed their lights in celebration. The war was over. On the Iron Dawn, Commander Yuna watched the Veloth fleet begin its withdrawal. Tay, Hannah, and Siok stood beside her, all of them exhausted but alive. They had fought in every major battle of the war. They had lost friends. They had nearly died more times than they could count. But they had survived. "We actually did it," Hannah whispered. "We won." "We did," Yuna agreed. But she felt no joy, only relief. Too many had died for her to feel joy. Her communication system crackled. Admiral Sora's voice came through, strong and clear despite the exhaustion Yuna knew she must be feeling. "To all ships of the Deathworlder Armada, the Veloth have surrendered. I repeat, the Veloth have surrendered. The war is over. You have fought bravely. You have defended humanity against an enemy that believed we could not be defeated. You have proven them wrong. Today, we are victorious. Today, we are free. Begin returning to base for repairs and rest. You have earned it." The channel closed. Yuna looked out the observation window at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Veloth were leaving. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was learning what humanity was capable of. The news of this war would spread. Other species would hear about the death world called Earth and the people who lived there. They would learn that humanity was not to be threatened. "Set course for home," Yuna said quietly. "We are done here." As the Iron Dawn turned toward Earth, Korath stood on his damaged bridge and watched the human fleet grow smaller in the distance. His fleet limped toward the edge of human space, carrying the survivors of a war they had been so certain they would win. The Veloth. Dominion had conquered 200 species over 10,000 years. They had believed themselves invincible. They had believed no one could stop them. They had been wrong. The humans had taught them a lesson that would echo through history. There were some species that could not be conquered. There were some worlds that produced survivors instead of victims. There were some enemies that were simply too stubborn, too determined, too dangerous to defeat. Earth was a death world. And its people were Deathworlders. As Korath's flagship crossed out of human space for the last time, he allowed himself one final thought. Perhaps the galaxy was not meant to have a single master. Perhaps there would always be species like the humans, creatures forged in fire and hardship, who would rise up against any who tried to dominate them. The Veloth had learned this lesson at a terrible cost. Korath only hoped that others would learn from their mistake. Behind him, the human fleet maintained its position, watching until the last Velith ship disappeared into the darkness between stars. They had defended their home. They had proven their strength. And now, finally, they could rest. The war was over. Humanity had won, and the galaxy would never forget it. Admiral Korath watched the human defensive line appear on his sensors. They had gathered near a small moon in the outer reaches of their territory, forming a barrier between the Velith fleet and the inner human worlds. His tactical officers had already counted their ships. Approximately 8,000 vessels, arranged in a standard defensive pattern. "They are fewer than we expected," Dreth observed. "Perhaps they could not gather their full fleet in time." Korath said nothing. He studied the human formation carefully. Something about it bothered him, but he could not identify what. The ships were smaller than Velith warships, their designs strange and unfamiliar. Some were long and narrow, built for speed. Others were wide and heavy, bristling with weapons. None of them looked particularly impressive. "Open a channel to all ships," Korath ordered. "We attack in 1 hour. Standard conquest formation. I want this finished quickly." The order went out. 3,000 Velith warships began arranging themselves for battle. Energy weapons charged. Fighter bays opened. Soldiers prepared for boarding operations. The machine of war that had never been defeated was ready to claim another victory across the empty space between the two fleets. Admiral Sora watched the Velith preparations from the bridge of her flagship, the Hammer of Earth. She was a small woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind her, her crew worked in complete silence. There was no fear on the bridge, only focus. "They are forming up for attack," her tactical officer reported. "Standard pattern, heavy ships forward, lighter ships in reserve, as expected." Sora studied the enemy formation. The Velith were confident, almost careless. They believed this would be easy. "Signal all ships. Prepare for Phase 1. The signal went out. 8,000 human ships received their orders and began to move. But they did not advance toward the enemy. Instead, they began to spread out, creating gaps in their formation that looked like weakness. On the Eternal Flame, Dreth noticed the change. "Admiral, the humans are breaking formation. They appear to be retreating." Korath's eyes narrowed. "No, they are not retreating. They are making room. Making room for what?" Before Korath could answer, space itself seemed to tear open. Behind the human defensive line, dozens of massive portals appeared, each one a swirling vortex of light and energy. And through those portals came ships. More ships than Korath had ever seen in one place. They poured through the portals in waves. First came the heavy battleships, massive vessels 3 times the size of the largest Velith warship. Their hulls were covered in weapons, so many weapons that they seemed to glow with barely contained violence. Behind the battleships came the carriers, each one launching hundreds of smaller attack craft. Behind the carriers came the cruisers and destroyers, sleek and deadly. Korath counted them. 5,000. 7,000. 9,000. The portals kept opening. More ships kept coming. By the time the last portal closed, over 12,000 additional warships had joined the original 8,000. The human fleet now numbered more than 20,000 vessels. "That is impossible," Dreth whispered. "Our intelligence said they had fewer than 10,000 ships total. Our intelligence was wrong." Korath's voice was calm, but his 4 eyes were wide. "Those portals. They must have hidden reserves. Ships we never detected." The Velith Dominion had been gathering information about humanity for months. They had counted the ships in human space. They had estimated production capabilities. All their calculations had suggested that humanity's total military strength was less than 10,000 warships. Somehow, they had been completely wrong. Admiral Sora smiled as the last of the reserve fleet took position. The Deathworlder Armada was finally assembled. 20,000 warships, built in secret shipyards hidden throughout human space. Humanity had learned long ago that visible strength attracted enemies. True strength was kept hidden until it was needed. All ships, this is Admiral Sora. Her voice carried across the fleet, calm and steady. The enemy before us has conquered hundreds of species. They believe they cannot be defeated. Today, we will teach them otherwise. For Earth, for humanity, attack. The human fleet moved forward as one. Not cautiously, not defensively. They charged directly at the Velith formation, engines burning at maximum power. The speed of the advance caught Korath off guard. No species had ever attacked the Velith so aggressively. All ships, defensive formation. He shouted, "Prepare for engagement." But the humans did not give them time to prepare. The first wave of human missiles struck the Velith fleet before their shields were fully raised. These were not ordinary missiles. They were weapons humanity had developed specifically for fighting superior enemies. Weapons designed to overwhelm any defense. Korath watched in horror as 3 Velith warships disappeared in nuclear fire. The explosions were blinding, brief suns that lit up the darkness of space. More missiles followed, hundreds of them, each one carrying enough destructive power to level a city. "Return fire!" Dreth screamed. "All ships, return fire!" The Velith weapons activated, sending beams of energy toward the advancing human ships. Some struck their targets, punching through human armor. Ships exploded on both sides. But for every human ship destroyed, 3 Velith ships fell. Human fighters swarmed through the battle space like angry insects. They were small and fast, almost impossible to target. Each one carried weapons that seemed weak individually, but devastating when used together. They targeted Velith engines, shields, and weapon systems with surgical precision. Within minutes, dozens of Velith ships were drifting powerlessly, their systems destroyed. On the Iron Dawn, Commander Yuna led her ship through the chaos. Her crew worked perfectly, years of training paying off in every action. Tay fired weapons with deadly accuracy. Seok navigated through debris and enemy fire as if he could see the future. Hana coordinated with other ships, maintaining the complex communication network that allowed the human fleet to fight as one. "Target the large ship on the left," Yuna ordered. "Their shields are weakening." The Iron Dawn dove toward a Velith cruiser. Its shields flickered as human weapons pounded against them. Yuna watched the energy readings, waiting for the moment. There, the shields dropped for just 1 second. And Tay fired everything they had. The Velith cruiser broke apart, its reactor exploding in a flash of white light. "Good hit," Yuna said. "Find the next target." Across the battlefield, Admiral Korath watched his fleet being torn apart. In 60 years of command, he had never seen anything like this. The humans fought without fear, without hesitation. They threw their ships into battle with a ferocity that shocked him. When one human ship was destroyed, 2 more took its place. And then he understood. These humans were not fighting like a species that wanted to survive. They were fighting like a species that had nothing to lose. They were fighting like creatures who had spent their entire evolutionary history battling against impossible odds. They were fighting like Deathworlders. "Admiral," Dreth said, his voice breaking, "we have lost over 500 ships. The humans are breaking through our formation." Korath looked at the tactical display. It was covered in red warnings. Ships destroyed. Systems failing. Lines collapsing. The Velith fleet, which had never known defeat, was being pushed back. "Signal all ships," Korath said quietly. "Full retreat. Fall back to secondary positions." "Retreat, sir?" Dreth could not believe what he was hearing. "The Velith do not retreat. The Velith do not die uselessly either. Korath watched another ship explode on the display. We need to regroup. We need reinforcements. These humans, they are not what we expected. The retreat signal went out. What remained of the Velith fleet began pulling back, their damaged ships struggling to escape. Behind them, the human fleet did not pursue immediately. They held their positions, watching their enemies flee. Admiral Sora stood on her bridge, surrounded by cheering officers. They had won. The first battle against the Velith Dominion had been a human victory. But Sora did not cheer. She knew this was only the beginning. "Damage report," she ordered. "We lost approximately 3,000 ships, Admiral. Another 2,000 are damaged but repairable. 3,000 ships. 3,000 crews. Hundreds of thousands of human lives gone in a single battle." It was a victory, but it had come at a terrible cost. "The enemy will return," Sora said. "They will bring more ships. This war is far from over." She looked out at the debris field that had once been a battlefield. Human and Velith ships floated together in death, their differences meaningless now. Somewhere out there, Korath was calling for reinforcements. Somewhere out there, the Velith Dominion was learning that humans were not easy prey. The next battle would be even worse. Sora knew this. But she also knew something else, something that gave her hope. Humanity had faced extinction before. They had survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that nearly destroyed them. Every time, they had come back stronger. Every time, they had refused to give up. The Velith had never faced an enemy like this. And soon, they would learn just how dangerous a Deathworlder species could be. The message from the humans arrived on Admiral Korath's bridge exactly 12 hours after Commander Yuna's escape. It was a simple transmission, sent on all frequencies, meant to be received by any ship in the fleet. Korath allowed it to play on the main speakers so his entire bridge crew could hear. The voice that spoke was male, calm, and surprisingly deep. It identified itself as belonging to someone called Captain June, speaking on behalf of something called the United Human Federation. "To the unknown fleet now entering our space," the voice said, "you have destroyed our stations. You have killed our people. We do not know who you are or what you want, but we are giving you this one chance. Turn back, leave our territory. Do not come closer to our worlds. If you continue your advance, we will consider it an act of war, and we will respond with all the force we possess. This is your only warning." The message ended. Silence filled the bridge. Then Dreth laughed. It was not a loud laugh, but it was genuine. "Did they just threaten us, Admiral?" These primitives actually threatened the Velith Dominion. Other officers on the bridge began to laugh as well. The sound spread like a wave, filling the command center with amusement. Even the normally serious tactical officers allowed themselves to smile. The idea that these humans, these creatures from a small blue planet, could threaten the greatest military force in the galaxy was simply too absurd. Korath did not laugh. He listened to the recording again, paying attention to every word. The human's voice was steady. There was no fear in it, no hesitation. This Captain June truly believed what he was saying. He truly believed that his species could fight the Velith and win. It was almost admirable. Almost. "Send a response," Korath ordered. "Let them know who they are dealing with." Dreth moved to the communications console. "What should I tell them, Admiral?" Korath considered for a moment. "Tell them this. The Velith Dominion has conquered 200 species across 1,000 star systems. We have never been defeated. We have never retreated. Their warning means nothing to us. In 14 days, their homeworld will belong to the Dominion, and their people will serve us. This is not a threat. This is simply the truth of what will happen. Resistance is pointless. Dreth transmitted the message with obvious pleasure. Around the bridge, officers returned to their work, still chuckling about the humans' foolish bravery. They had seen this before, many times. Primitive species always believed they were special. They always believed they could be the ones to stop the Velith advance. They were always wrong, but Korath could not quite shake the feeling that something was different this time. He walked to his private console and pulled up the information his scouts had gathered about Earth and its people. The data was limited, but what there was made him thoughtful. Humans had evolved on a world of extremes. Their planet experienced temperature swings that would kill most species. Their oceans were filled with predators. Their land was covered with creatures that hunted and killed. Diseases swept through their populations constantly. Natural disasters struck without warning. By all logic, no intelligent species should have been able to evolve in such conditions. Yet the humans had not just evolved. They had thrived. They had conquered their world, eliminated or controlled the predators that once hunted them, and bent their planet's resources to their will. They had built cities that touched the clouds and ships that sailed between stars. They had done all of this in a remarkably short time compared to other species. Korath studied images of human soldiers taken from captured data files. They were strange creatures, with soft skin and fragile-looking bodies. They had only 2 eyes, only 2 arms, only 2 legs. By Velith standards, they were physically weak. A single Velith warrior could easily overpower 10 humans in direct combat. But physical strength was not everything. The Velith had learned this lesson many times. Some of their most dangerous enemies had been species that seemed weak at first glance. The question was not how strong the humans looked, but how they thought. How they fought. How they responded to danger. The human warning had been interesting for exactly this reason. It showed no fear. It made no attempts to negotiate or plead. It simply stated a fact. Come closer, and we will destroy you. This was the language of a species that did not know how to surrender. This was the language of predators. Korath closed the data files and returned to the main bridge. His officers were still confident, still amused by the human threat. They saw a small species with primitive technology and assumed the conquest would be easy. Perhaps they were right. But Korath had been a military commander for 60 years. He had learned to never underestimate an enemy, no matter how weak they appeared. He had seen fleets destroyed by species that everyone thought were helpless. He had watched empires fall because of a single mistake, a single moment of overconfidence. Dreth, he said quietly, so only his second-in-command could hear. Increase our scanning range. I want to know everything about this human species before we reach their space. Everything. Dreth looked surprised. Is the Admiral concerned? I am cautious, Korath corrected. There is a difference. These humans evolved on a death world. They survived conditions that would kill most species. That alone makes them worthy of attention. But our forces are overwhelming, sir. We have over 3,000 ships. Our intelligence suggests they have less than 10,000 total, spread across their entire territory. Numbers are not everything, Dreth. Remember the Kef campaign. We outnumbered them 50 to 1. We still lost 200 ships before we claimed victory. Dreth nodded slowly, understanding beginning to show in his eyes. I will increase the scans, Admiral. We will know everything about these humans before we engage them. Good. Korath returned to the observation window. The stars stretched out before him, cold and endless. Somewhere ahead, the humans were preparing for war. They were gathering their forces, planning their defense, readying themselves for a battle they could not possibly win. They did not understand what was coming. They did not understand the power of the Velith Dominion, or perhaps they did. Perhaps they understood perfectly and were choosing to fight anyway. That possibility intrigued Korath more than he wanted to admit. On Earth, Captain June stood in the command center of humanity's military headquarters. He had just finished sending his warning to the alien fleet. Around him, dozens of officers worked at their stations, coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. The Deathworlder Armada was awakening. Ships that had waited for centuries were powering up their engines. Soldiers who had trained their entire lives for a battle that might never come were finally receiving their orders. The message was simple: defend humanity at all costs. June looked at the tactical display. The alien fleet was still 14 days away. That was enough time to gather the Armada, to set up defensive positions, to prepare for whatever was coming. It would have to be enough. His second-in-command, a woman named Mina, approached him with a datapad. "Sir, Earth Command has confirmed. All fleet commanders have been notified. The full Armada will assemble at the threshold line in 12 days. Good. June took the datapad and reviewed the information. 10,000 ships. 50 million soldiers. The full might of humanity's military gathered in one place for the first time in history. Sir, Mina said quietly, do you really think they will ignore our warning? June looked at her. They've already ignored it. They think we are weak, Mina. They think we are primitives who cannot hurt them. They are wrong. He turned back to the tactical display. The alien fleet appeared as a mass of red dots, moving steadily toward human space. They did not know what was waiting for them. They did not know that humanity had spent 400 years preparing for exactly this moment. They were about to learn. Commander Yuna was sleeping when the alarm woke her. The sound cut through her dreams like a knife, sharp and urgent. She opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling of her quarters for exactly 2 seconds. Then she was on her feet, pulling on her uniform as she ran for the door. The corridors of the Iron Dawn were filled with running soldiers. Red lights flashed along the walls. Yuna pushed through them, her heart beating fast but her mind staying calm. She had been a soldier for 20 years. Panic was not something she allowed herself. She reached the bridge in less than 3 minutes. Her crew was already there, standing at their stations. Tay, her weapons officer, looked up as she entered. His face was serious. Beside him stood Hana, the communications specialist, and Siok, the ship's navigator. They were the best crew Yuna had ever commanded. Report, Yuna said, taking her place in the command chair. Hana spoke first. Commander, we received a distress signal from the outer colonies. Specifically, from Research Station 12 near the edge of our territory. What kind of distress? Unknown ships, Commander. The station detected a fleet entering the system. They did not respond to communication attempts. The last message from the station was a request for immediate military assistance. Yuna frowned. Unknown ships? Are we sure it is not a malfunction in their sensors? Tay shook his head. We checked, Commander. 3 other stations in the outer region reported similar readings before going silent. Something is out there. Something big. Yuna felt a cold feeling in her stomach. Humanity had been a spacefaring species for over 400 years. In that time, they had encountered only simple life forms on other worlds. No intelligent aliens. No other civilizations. Many scientists had begun to believe that humans were alone in the universe. It seemed they had been wrong. Show me what we know. Yuna ordered. Seok pulled up a display on the main screen. It showed the outer edge of human space, where a handful of research stations monitored the darkness between stars. Red dots marked the locations of stations that had stopped communicating. There were already 7 of them. The pattern suggests they are moving toward the inner colonies, Siok said. At their current speed, they will reach the first populated world in approximately 15 days. How many ships? We cannot be certain, Commander. But based on the energy readings, we estimate at least 500 vessels. Possibly more. Yuna stood up and walked closer to the screen. 500 ships. Earth's entire defense fleet numbered around 10,000 vessels, but they were spread across dozens of worlds. Gathering them would take time. Time they might not have. Has Earth been notified? She asked. Hannah nodded. Yes, Commander. High Command received our report 2 hours ago. They are mobilizing the defense network. The defense network. Yuna had heard stories about it since she was a child. Every human knew the history. Centuries ago, when humanity first left Earth and began colonizing other worlds, the governments of Earth had made a decision. They would never be caught unprepared. They would never be weak. The result was the Deathworlder Armada, the greatest military force humanity had ever created. 10,000 warships, armed with weapons that could crack planets. Soldiers trained from childhood to fight in any environment. Technology designed not just for exploration, but for war. For 400 years, the Armada had waited. It had trained. It had grown stronger. Many had questioned whether it was necessary, whether humanity needed such a massive military when there were no enemies to fight. But Earth's leaders had always said the same thing. It is better to have strength and not need it than to need strength and not have it. Now, for the first time in history, that strength would be tested. Commander, Tay said quietly. What are your orders? Yuna made her decision. Set course for Research Station 12. We need to see these aliens for ourselves. We need to understand what we are facing. That could be dangerous, Seok warned. If there are really 500 enemy ships out there, then we will be careful. Yuna returned to her command chair. But we cannot fight an enemy we do not understand. Someone needs to make first contact. Someone needs to learn what these aliens want. The Iron Dawn was not a large ship. It carried a crew of just 200 and was designed for patrol and reconnaissance, not direct combat. But it was fast and it was quiet. If anyone could get close enough to observe the alien fleet without being detected, it was them. Seok entered the coordinates into the navigation system. Course set, Commander. We will arrive at Station 12 in approximately 6 hours. Good. Yuna looked at her crew. I want everyone at full alert. No one sleeps until we know what we are dealing with. Tay, make sure all weapons are ready. Hannah, keep monitoring for any signals from the aliens. If they try to communicate, I want to know immediately. Yes, Commander, they answered together. As the Iron Dawn jumped into faster-than-light travel, Yuna allowed herself a moment of fear. Real fear, the kind she usually kept hidden. Somewhere out there, an unknown force was destroying human stations. An unknown force was moving toward human worlds. For the first time in 4 centuries, humanity faced an external threat. But fear was useful only if it led to action. Yuna had been born on Earth, in a small city surrounded by mountains. She had grown up hearing stories about her ancestors, about the wars they had fought, about the challenges they had overcome. Humans were survivors. Humans were fighters. Whatever these aliens wanted, they would not find Earth easy to conquer. 6 hours later, the Iron Dawn dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Research Station 12 system. What Yuna saw on the sensors made her blood run cold. The station was gone. In its place was a field of debris, pieces of metal and glass floating in the darkness of space. And beyond the debris, visible, even without magnification, was the alien fleet. It was massive. Far larger than 500 ships. Yuna counted quickly, her eyes moving across the screen. 1,000. 2,000. More. The ships stretched across space like a wall, their dark holes reflecting the light of distant stars. Commander, Hannah whispered. We are being scanned. Yuna did not hesitate. Seok, get us out of here. Now. The Iron Dawn turned and accelerated, pushing its engines to maximum power. Behind them, the alien fleet did not pursue. They simply watched, as if observing an insect that posed no threat. As her ship fled toward human space, Yuna knew one thing with absolute certainty. The message she was about to send to Earth would change everything. The age of peace was over. War had come to humanity. And humanity would have to answer. The stars had always belonged to the Velith. At least, that was what Admiral Korath believed. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Flame, and watched another world burn. This was the 12th star system to fall under Velith control. 12 systems. 0 defeats. The numbers pleased him greatly. Korath was tall for his species, with gray skin that shimmered like metal under the ship's lights. His 4 eyes scanned the holographic display before him. The planet below was called Fenris by its people. They had tried to fight. They had failed. Now their cities turned to ash, and their survivors knelt before the Velith flag. "Admiral," said his second-in-command, a younger Velith named Dreth. "The ground forces report full control of the capital. The Fenris leadership has surrendered." Korath did not smile. He never smiled. Victory was expected, not celebrated. "Good. Begin resource extraction immediately. I want this system producing within 30 cycles." "Yes, Admiral." The Velith Dominion had existed for 10,000 years. In that time, they had conquered over 200 species. Some had joined willingly, seeing the benefits of Velith rule. Others had resisted. Those who resisted learned a simple truth. The Velith always won. Their ships were faster. Their weapons were stronger. Their soldiers were trained from birth to fight and die for the Dominion. No species in the known galaxy could match their military power. Korath had commanded fleets for over 60 years, and he had never lost a single battle. He walked to the observation window and looked out at the burning world. The Fenris had been proud warriors. They had believed their mountain fortresses were unbreakable. They had believed their ancient weapons could harm Velith ships. They had been wrong about everything. "Sir," Dreth spoke again, his voice carrying a hint of excitement. "The scouts have returned from the outer regions. They found something interesting." Korath turned slowly. "Interesting how?" Dreth pulled up a new holographic display. It showed a star system far from Velith space, in a region they had not yet explored. At the center was a yellow star, ordinary in every way. Around it orbited 8 planets. The 3rd planet from the star was marked with a red circle. "This world," Dreth said, pointing to the marked planet. The scouts detected advanced technology there. Electromagnetic signals. Spacecraft in orbit. Signs of a developed civilization. Korath studied the display. The planet was small, covered mostly in water. Landmasses spread across its surface in irregular patterns. It did not look impressive. What species lives there? The scouts could not get close enough for detailed scans, but they intercepted some of their communications. The species calls itself human. They call their planet Earth. "Earth," Korath repeated. The word felt strange in his mouth. "What do we know about these humans?" Dreth hesitated. "Very little, Admiral. They appear to be relatively young as a spacefaring species. They have colonized only a handful of worlds in their system. Their technology seems primitive compared to ours. Then why you bring this to my attention? If they are primitive, they are not worth my time." "There is something else, sir." Dreth's 4 eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of nervousness. The scouts classified their homeworld. According to the standard planetary assessment, Earth is a death world. Korath froze. The term death world was not used lightly. It referred to planets with extreme conditions, places where survival itself was a constant battle. high gravity, dangerous predators, violent weather, toxic environments. Few intelligent species evolved on such worlds, and those who did were often different. Explain, Korath demanded. Earth is high gravity compared to most inhabited worlds. The planet experiences extreme weather, including storms that can level cities. Much of its life is predatory. The humans evolved alongside creatures designed to kill. Diseases spread constantly. The planet itself seems determined to destroy everything that lives on it. Korath considered this information. Deathworld species were rare. Most died out before achieving space travel. Those who survived were often dangerous, their bodies and minds hardened by the constant struggle for survival. But dangerous did not mean invincible. The Veleth had conquered Deathworld species before. How many humans are there? He asked. Our estimates suggest approximately 15 billion on their homeworld. Perhaps another 5 billion spread across their colonies. 20 billion. Korath almost laughed. The Veleth Dominion controlled trillions. And their military strength? Unknown, sir. But based on their technology level, we estimate they could not field more than a few thousand warships. Nothing compared to our forces. Korath made his decision quickly. Set course for this Earth. We will add these humans to the Dominion. Dreth bowed his head. Yes, Admiral. But sir, should we not gather more information first? Deathworld species can be unpredictable. Unpredictable does not mean strong, Korath replied coldly. We have conquered 12 systems without defeat. We have broken species far older and more advanced than these humans. They are primitive. They are few. They will fall like all the others. He turned back to the observation window. Below, the Fenris world continued to burn. Its people had thought themselves warriors. They had been wrong. Now they served the Dominion. The humans would be no different. Send word to the High Command, Korath ordered. Tell them I am claiming the Earth system in the name of the Veleth Dominion. Within 100 cycles, their flag will fly over human cities. It will be done, Admiral. As Dreth left to carry out his orders, Korath remained at the window. Somewhere in the distant stars, a small blue planet orbited its sun. Its people lived their lives, unaware that the greatest military force in the galaxy had just set its sights on them. Korath felt no excitement, no anticipation, only certainty. The humans would resist. They always did, these primitive species. They would fight with whatever weapons they had. They would make speeches about freedom and survival. They would believe, for a brief moment, that they could win, and then they would learn the truth that every conquered species eventually learned. The Veleth did not lose. The Veleth could not be stopped. The Veleth were the masters of the galaxy, and all other species existed only to serve them. Earth would burn, just like Fenris, just like all the others before it. Korath was certain of this. He had never been more wrong about anything in his entire life.